Welcome everyone. For today's video, we're going to be doing something a little bit differently. I'm going to be checking out the Dread X collection, The Hunt. This is a collection of indie horror games, all from the Dread X collection series. I got a press key to look at this, and for this video, we're going to go through each game in the collection and talk a little bit about my thoughts on them, and kind of which ones were my favorite, least favorite, and how will they hold up in terms of horror design. If you're interested in my interview with Ted and Star from Dread XP, I'll put a link to that in the description down below. Otherwise, let's switch over and we'll talk about our first game. And we are beginning with Axis Mundi. This one is essentially a more narrative-focused Fatal Frame, where we play a paranormal investigator who has come to the site of what appears to be the start of a mall. And unfortunately, the mall has become overran by ghosts. In order to figure out what has gone wrong, we need to use our powers and this lovely magic camera here in order to fight with them. Now, the main thing about the challenge of Axis Mundi is that the camera needs to be charged. That's the kind of meter you see in the bottom right. So, you can't exactly be taking photos all rapid-like. And a lot of this game is take a photo, run away, take a photo, run away. And this is also interspersed with narrative and the character talking about how he started as a paranormal investigator and more about exploring the site. Now, from kind of an overall point of view, presentation, aesthetics, and gameplay, Axis Mundi is, I would rate this as my favorite of the 7 games. I feel there's a lot to explore in this space, in terms of exploring the mall, learning more about the people there, and maybe expanding on the gameplay and puzzle solving. Now, if you're wondering if this game is on the hard side, I played this at the highest difficulty, and I died a few times, but overall, I don't think this is going to be as crazily difficult as some of the other games, especially try to play them on the highest setting. For our next one, this is Uktena 64, and I'm pretty sure I butchered that title. This is a game from Kira, who of course did Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion and Lost in Vivo. So, this game plays as a N64 inspired FPS. If you played something like Turok or GoldenEye back in the day, the style and graphics may look familiar to you. So our job is that we are looking for animals and trying to figure out why they are acting all strange. And to do so, we need to go out and hunt them and then take photographs of their dead bodies in order to confirm it. And then things turn into the Thing, as you can see by this tri-turkey flesh hybrid that's coming at me right now. Now, of the games in the collection, this is definitely one of the more harder ones, especially if you're playing this on the highest difficulty. Part of the challenge is that the enemies have that old school jank to them, and they'll kind of track you and chase after you in very crazy ways. You do get a few weapons, but for the most part, you're going to be relying on your rifle here, and it is a single-shot rifle as well. So, for this one, I would put this on the higher-end side. It is such an interesting game to check out, and I will say that this is like the only game in a long time that managed to get me really good with this jump scare. And I don't want to explain where it is, because then that would ruin said jump scare. But I guess this game gets the honorary Scare Josh with a Jump Scare medal that is rarely given out these days. And the game has some very catchy UI or menu music as well. And I would definitely advise that if you're not really up on your FPS skills, to not play this at the highest difficulty. Not only does the difficulty change how much damage you can do and take, it also affects the number of enemies that can show up, as well as how much of a threat they are at any one time. And with that, let's turn to Rows of Meat. And yeah, as you can tell by the visuals already, this is an odd one. This is of course from Mr. Pink, who's making Golden Light. And for our story this time, we have been wash ashore on a strange island. We also have a flesh leg here called Lady Shoe, who is trying to aid us in getting off this island. All we know is that there's a mysterious woman named Rose, crazy things like this, and giant eyeballs blocking our way. Also, we can blow stuff up, as you saw right there. So, despite having a gun and flesh leg, there really isn't a lot of direct combat in Rows of Meat. Instead, your main mechanic is that you use your leg to create these kinds of red explosive barrels, which you can then shoot and blow up, dealing damage and destroying the environment around it. All while you're exploring a very weird and surrealistic world. So what's interesting about this game is that, again, it's one of those titles where half the fun is just trying to figure out what the hell are you even doing. And as a very weird touch, the game was even set up for a state if you decide to fall off the edge of the world, like I did right here, and discovered, well, there's a lot of meat and stereos here. So, yeah, if you're hoping for a game that makes perfect sense and explains everything, you're not gonna find it. So, in terms of the gameplay, it does feel a little weird to play. It has the same kind of physics and motion as Golden Light. So if that game didn't work for you, you're probably not going to enjoy this one as much. But again, from a weird point of view, it's definitely one of those titles that you just gotta see to believe. And despite the weirdness, it is a bit on the shorter side. Once you know where you have to go and what you're doing, you can get it done fairly quickly. It's just a little hard knowing where you have to go, considering how weird and just how off-kilter the island is. So, with that, let's move on to game number 4. And that is Seraphixial. And I hope I didn't butcher that too badly. Of the games in the collection, this is perhaps the most traditional in terms of its gameplay. This is a shooter where you're killing what appears to be rejects from every 80s, children's show imaginable. The story is, well, it may not look it, but we have come to a submarine to find our missing daughter. And when we went into it, we ended up in this crazy world full of flesh-styled weapons and lots of very weird and quite unusual environments and imagery, as you see here. So as I said, this is the most traditional in terms of its gameplay. Enemies drop ammo, you kill enemies, you get more ammo, rinse and repeat. And the horror aspect is mainly in terms of the crazy visuals. There are some jump scares to it. Of the games, my main concern or the main issue for me with this one is that it did get very repetitive. Most enemies, as you can see, are of the run at you with no regard for anything else strategy. So as long as you keep backpedaling, you can kill them. But a lot of this game, I think, comes down to the aesthetics and just the crazy art of it. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games to look at for this video. And now for a quick thank you to our current Patreon supporters. And if you're interested in my books on design, they are available at most major retailers. 20 Essential Games to Study is for first-time developers looking to be inspired, and the Game Design Deep Dive series covers the history and philosophy of major genres, with horror coming later in 2021. Up now we have Black Relic, and I love the aesthetics and tone of this one. It has that kind of like late 80s, early 90s, very gothic, very pixelated look to it. So for this one, this is a third-person shooter where we are a monk who must recover the mysterious Black Relic. And to do so, we are going to take crossbow in hand and just start sniping our way through pagan cultists, monsters, and more. So, of the games of this collection, this is one that I really like from a presentation and tone standpoint. So your main weapon is the crossbow, and as you can see, You have to reload this one bolt at a time, all while enemies are doing their best to get at you. Now, to be fair, the enemies do slow down as they approach to give you some chance to reload. I guess they're very kind in that regard. From playing this one, we did play it all the way through. While I did enjoy this one, it did start to wear thin as we approach the halfway to the final quarter of it. Enemies don't really change all that much. You either fight them in melee, or you have to take them down at range. And it's just basically repeating the same thing, albeit in different, very beautifully gothic environments. But it does, I think, go as long as it needed to do for the story and the gameplay. And I wouldn't mind seeing like this kind of design, again, more of a methodical focus on combat, explored in the future. And with that, we turn to the fruit. And conceptually, and I think just all around, this is the most realized of the games in the Dread X collection, The Hunt. So, our story is that we have come to this strange village and the surrounding area in order to find our lover. And unfortunately, it just so happens that a strange tree has produced fruit that has transformed the majority of the people into monstrous creatures hell-bent on killing you, while the remaining religious followers are holed up in town. Your mission is to figure out what happened, find your lover, and of course not get killed by all manner of things. Your weapons include this lovely axe, a magic book that you'll use to inscribe runes in the areas, and your gun. Now, what may be the most polarizing feature of the fruit is the reload mechanic, as you have to reload your gun manually, as you can see right there. And enemies are quite good at shooting you, but they also have to reload. And one of the best strategies is basically just to, if once they're in reload, run straight at them with your axe and try to take care of them. Now, the world exploration is kind of similar to something like Sir, You Are Being Hunted, and a few of the other kind of open world horror games that we've played. You have to focus on stealth, as there are many roving groups of enemies, and you really can't fight them, 1 against 3, or in some cases 1 against like 6 or 7. And you'll have to pick and choose your fights accordingly. The progression of this game is both finding lore all around, as well as uncovering the various runes, because you'll need to inscribe them into your book in order to then use them to unlock various doors and gates. Now, here's another thing to keep in mind about this game. I played this on the highest difficulty, and I would strongly recommend not doing that. This game can get very difficult. There's a few sections in the back half that can become very janky, where you'll have to fight ghosts by quickly finding the correct rune in your spell book in order to then kind of remove them from the world. Enemies do a lot of damage to you, and you can only checkpoint at fireplaces. And as you can see, enemies are apparently really damn good at throwing and shooting stuff at you. And overall, I don't know if I would rate the fruit as one of my favorites on this collection, but as I said, all the way around, I think this is the most realized game, and it's probably, I think, the longest one of the 7. And if you don't mind the difficulty and kind of the getting lost as you're trying to figure out where you have to go and what order to do things with, I would say this is one you definitely want to play from it. With that, we turn to the last game from the collection, and that is the House of Unrest. So, the story of this is that we are a priest who has been called in to perform an exorcism at this character's home, when it turns out that he has actually been possessed by an evil demon who has taken over the home, made things all evil, and we're going to figure out how to banish the demon back. So, fortunately for us, besides being armed with our laser holy cross, as you saw right there, we also have a gun with infinite ammo to it. So for this one, this is more adventure shooter as opposed to shooter adventure. There are enemies, but they are of the most basic variety, and your main goal here is to explore the manor and the various estate, looking for keys and important items that you need in order to get the necessary crystals to perform the ritual and banish this creature. So mechanically, I did enjoy this game. It is a bit on the darker side. You'll notice as the footage is playing that I keep using the cross to basically act as a surrogate flashlight for trying to figure out where we're supposed to be going. And this is one of those games where it's very easy to miss a clue or important item. And I actually did get lost near the end because we missed one thing that I needed out of everything that we could find. But the gunplay felt okay, and I did like having to explore and solve puzzles while still having the power to deal with these enemies. And deal with them in perhaps the most bombastic way possible. And proving that the real demon killer is akimbo AK-47s here. But that is going to do it for our look at the Dread X collection, The Hunt. I'd like to thank Dread X for giving me a press key to check this one out. And as always, if you let me tackle your game in the future, please get in touch, as we're always looking for titles to spotlight and developers to talk to. Come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where is some of the art and science of games. Until next time, take care.